right. Hey. Check. All right, what is up, everybody? Today's video is all about how to properly organize your footage during and after you get done with a shoot. Organization is truly the key to getting an edit done efficiently. Pretty much what I'm saying is that when your footage is unorganized, it can be very hard to deliver a video to a client. It can be very hard to actually get your video done. So with what I'm about to teach you, I think it'll drastically impact your workflow, your speed at which you operate, and also just your organization, so that if you were to revisit an edit from 3 years ago and open up that project, everything would still be online and not that doomsday red media offline that every filmmaker just hates. All right, but before we dive in any further, it's worth noting that we have added a whole lineup of hard drives to our store. We have some amazing brands, and getting a good hard drive is also key to keeping your footage safe, having enough storage, and also just the speed at which the hard drive operates in order for you to work off of it. Okay, let's dive in. I've just realized that this chair is like really squeaky. So, sorry. All right, so right now I'm gonna open up my hard drive and I can show you the first thing, which is your folder structure. Right here, you'll see 2 folders. The one for this demonstration that we're gonna be using is the lesson that we just shot with Willem Verbeek. He's an amazing film photographer and YouTuber based in New York, and his lesson is so rad. And the footage just looked insane. So I'm super psyched on this one, and it'll be a good demonstration of showing you just how to organize everything. So if you click in here, first off, I always start with the date, because the date is then how that falls into line. So you will see how this other freelance project I did was in February. 7 obviously comes after that. So basically it'll organize it by date. Starting to get hot, I'm gonna take my jacket off. All right, so within this folder, you have 2 key folders that you're gonna be operating out of. The first is LiveWorks and the second is RAW. Let's go ahead and start with RAW. This is where all your footage is going to live from your shoot. So if you click in RAW, basically how I organize everything is basically by day, and then by scene, and then by camera. Now, let's say your shoot isn't multiple days, then obviously you can skip that part of the process and just do things by camera. It can be by what phone you use, by what body you used, or by what scene you shot. Basically, all I'm trying to get at is that start with an organizational structure that basically lets you know where all the footage, if you were to go look for it, would live. So within day 1, you'll see that we shot this section, and within there we have basically the 2 cameras that we shot on, which is the C100 and the C200. Within those folders, then I know, like, the C100 was Mike, the C200 was me, and then I can go look for this footage. So it's basically organized by scene in order just to keep it organized, knowing how many sections we have and how I could then find that footage if I was to look for it. You'll see here we have day 2. We have a bunch of folders in here because we shot a lot that day. This section with like a hashtag was like an impromptu section that I wasn't sure what the actual section number was gonna be, so I just kind of made a note of that and then kept moving on. But yeah, again, with all these, you'll just see it organized with the 2 folders within each scene. Here we have a screen recording, which was of Willem editing. Open that up. It's awesome. And then you'll also notice that within these folders, there's an XML file. Now, don't worry about this too much right now. That XML file is from a program called Pluralize, which is basically like this boss app that just syncs a lot of footage automatically. That's for another video. You can go check out Pluralize if you want. It's pretty expensive, but it's super helpful. But in a second, I'll show you basically a free way to do that in Premiere, so don't stress too much yet. All right, yes, so here we have it. We have, again, our 4 days with a bunch of sections, and then also with what cameras were in each. Now, another example of this could be if you shot a short film on a phone. And then when you broke that out, you could break it into days as well. You could break it into like sunrise, sunset. If you were shooting on multiple phones, you could call it, Samsung Note 10. You could call it iPhone 11 Pro, Pixel 4 XL, whatever you needed. Basically, all I'm saying is that put all of your footage in RAW and then organize it in a folder structure that you never move. And the reason you never want to move it is because Premiere or Final Cut or wherever your footage is living is gonna reference these folders. And if they move, then that media becomes offline, which sucks. All right, next we're gonna hop up to LiveWorks. LiveWorks is basically everything that you're working in that isn't footage. So it's your sound, it's your music, it's your graphics. It's basically all the aspects of your project that aren't footage. So in here, the AE folder, which is of course empty because I haven't really done anything yet, would be After Effects. So any like After Effects, or if you were gonna do some stuff in Audition or any other program, you can make a folder and then make sure all that operates out of that folder. This is exports. Exports is gonna be where everything you export goes into this. So here you could actually you could go roughs, and then you could have final. And basically what that does is it lets you keep track of your exports, knowing that all your exports live in this folder. The next is GFX, which stands for graphics. In here, I have a bunch of just like visual stuff that I like to use. I have these 16mm looks from Ezra Cohen that I like. And yeah, these are basically just video effects that I like, that I've used, and that I always want to have available. The next is my music. I've basically downloaded a bunch of songs from MusicBed that I think will work for various aspects of this lesson. If you were just working on a short film, you could have less, you could have more. Basically just know all your music lives in here. Then here we have project, and basically you have your project here as well as your autosave, just so again, if you ever move this hard drive, you have the project available here and not locally to your computer. I think that's really what I'm getting at here, is you don't want anything to do with your project to be living locally on a computer or on a desktop. You want it to be on a hard drive. And the reason you want it to be on a hard drive is because, let's say your computer breaks, or you wanna use a different computer, or you're on vacation, or I don't know. Basically, this is really easy to carry around, and pretty much it has a limitless amount of storage when your computer most likely only has like 250 gigs, 500 gigs of space. All right, the last folder that I always use is sound effects. So here we have basically a bunch of sound effects that I often use for sound design. This is kind of my like base foundational sound effects kit. I just have a bunch of stuff in here that I actually got back in the day at GoPro. But yeah, basically in this folder is where all your sound effects live. So there's a lot of like rumbling and rising and city stuff that I use all the time. And again, you don't want those to live in your downloads folder. You want those to live in a specific folder that you can always reference. All right, so that is the first part of this video. It sounds pretty straightforward, but I can't tell you how many filmmakers I've met that still don't have a process for how they store their footage. And having that process, that workflow down is essential. Because imagine if I'm doing a project every week and I have just all these dates per week. If I start to lose track of where footage is, that's just gonna make my life as a filmmaker way harder. It's gonna make my job as finishing edits much more difficult. And at the end of the day, if you can't get that deliverable to the client, that is a big issue. Okay, so right now I'm gonna open up the project for Willem. And I'm basically gonna show you how these folders then translate directly into the project. So you'll see here in RAW, basically I have those day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 folders listed out, and that is where all my footage lives. So it is an exact copy of what you see on the actual hard drive. Okay, now the LiveWorks folder is a little more complicated in that there's just more folders. So basically you'll see here that in my LiveWorks on my hard drive, I have those folders that I've already talked about. Now, After Effects and exports, those things aren't gonna go directly into my project, but graphics, music, and sound effects are. Project obviously isn't either because I have the project open. But within your LiveWorks folder, in your project, you'll see GFX, music, SFX. You'll also see here SEQ, which stands for sequences. Now, for a lesson, there are a ton of sequences. Most likely, you're just gonna have a couple for most projects. So here I have all my sections from section 1 all the way to section 14, and then the short film that I'm making about Willem, and then also the YouTube video that we're gonna put on our channel. Now, the reason I have those broken out is because those are all like mini edits. Lessons are probably like the biggest projects I've ever worked on in terms of just sheer amount of footage and content that you have to work with. A lot of times I just have a couple of sequences. I usually call my main sequence just main, just so I know that's what I'm working out of. Sometimes I'll have a select sequence, but I'll basically break down what I do in each of these. And the reason I have one for each is because they're all like little edits. They're all self-standing sections that belong in the lesson. Another folder that you're probably gonna want is Nest, and this is for when you nest clips. So if you're using Warp Stabilizer or something, a lot of times I'll have a folder where all those nested clips live. Another thing you might want to do is if you have like photos or stills or anything else, you could put that in the GFX folder. So here I could make a new bin under GFX that's basically like video looks. And then I can have another one that's like Willem photos, because I'm going to be using a lot of his photos, or like Willem stills. So then when he sends me those photos, I will put those in here. All right, so that is pretty much how you would then mimic what you have in your folders in your project. You don't have to do it exactly like me, but just find a process that works for you. Basically, I have just dozens of these hard drives that are all ordered by date, and then the project, and then with this folder structure. So I know if I open any project I've shot in the last 5 years, everything will be online and everything will be accessible, which is just very, very nice. I highly recommend it. So from this point is when you would start your edit. You have all your footage lined up, you have your music, your sound, your graphics, everything you might need for your edit. You have folders made. In your project, you have your LiveWorks and RAW folders that mimic for the most part what you have on your hard drive. And then in your project you have a couple custom bins, like for your sequences and for your nested clips, and from there is when you can start editing and really start diving in to getting your video done. All right guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful and not too boring, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.